So is in-play betting picking up? Recently, Lee asked this question over on Twitter. So in this video, I'm going to cover 4 points. First of all, I'm going to answer Lee's question in response. Secondly, I want to talk about the pros and cons of in-play betting, trading, be it on horse racing, football or any other sport. Then I'm going to tell you how some people make money in play consistently, and finally I'll share a few tips, a little bit of information that I'm aware of that could potentially help you to trade and bet in play. So to kick off straight away with Lee's question, first of all, I completely understand why you might ask that, Lee. I think that's probably the same thing that I've seen recently that you're seeing, and that would probably be, particularly on places like Twitter, social media, there's been a rise in interest in in-play betting strategies and various systems, and a lot of that I think centres from new accounts which suggest this is what they do and they're making a fortune. It's completely down to you whether you decide on how valid some of those accounts are. Usually they're quite anonymous, but as far as I'm concerned, as a professional trader looking at the markets, there's no real reason as to why in-play betting is picking up. There's not an increased level of liquidity in play on the markets, assuming you're talking about horse racing markets, and there's no logical reason as to why it would become more popular in terms of time delays. So time delays are not being increased, if anything they're being decreased, and that's not good for people that make money from betting in play markets. So there's no real logical reason that I can see there. Also, just to add into that, again, depending on sport, some of these other exchanges, because there's now 4 exchanges, Betfair still has the lion's share by far. These other exchanges are actually taking liquidity away from Betfair, so if you're trading in play, you'll probably find it harder to get bets matched. Now, this takes me swiftly on to the number one thing about in-play trading and in-play betting, and how people make money in-play betting, and that is speed. Okay, it's nothing to do with knowing something that everybody else doesn't. Well, maybe you could consider that knowing about the speed is, but speed is the number one thing. So you may have seen articles in the newspaper like The Guardian, for example, where they spoke about drones and people that were flying drones over courses just to get an advantage of a few seconds to place their bets. What that does is that allows them to place bets on something that's basically already happened. They can bet on the winning horse as it comes around the bend before you see it at home. So they were doing that via drones. In the past I've seen people doing it via cherry pickers. That's been in the news as well. And also if you watch At the Races, you'll have seen, I think it's Matt Chapman, highlight that people were standing in the farmer's field next door with iPads and stuff like that. So those people were betting in play ahead of the time delay, which gives them a significant advantage on everybody else at home. There is time delays added in to placing bets on the exchanges to try and reduce this kind of thing and people being harmed that didn't have a chance to cancel their bets, but it will always go on. At the end of the day, somebody has to be first, don't they? So previously also I've spoken to people on course in days gone by, people that were doing it in very early days. I had a few beers with them, nice blokes, told me some stories about sort of sitting in barrels and stuff on the edge of courses the night before with a radio, just so they could then transmit back to somebody else who's placing bets that the horse has come around the bend, this one's leading, it looks like it's going to win, way ahead of the TV delay. Now there's been some changes over the years as well with TV delays, which will have significantly affected in-play betting. As I alluded to back near to the intro there as well, not in a positive way if you're one of these people trying to exploit the in-play delays. So CIS TV used to be quite popular. You may have heard of it. I think one of the more popular traders online used to have it at home, and it was very expensive, something like, I think it was 12 or 16 grand a year or something like that for a CIS subscription at some point. Don't quote me, that might be wrong. But I also spoke to another guy, Dave, who's got a blog online somewhere, I'll link it below. He was previously a trader in an exchange shop in Canary Wharf, and he said to me, whilst we was having a beer once, that on the day that the delays changed with CIS TV, a load of people stopped coming back to the shop, and it was that cut and dry and that simple. So when that delay was reduced between CIS TV and real time, there was less edge there for them, and so people stopped bothering. Also, the guys on course said that over time it become more competitive because so many more people were turning up at the course to try and bet on the horse in the final straight. You had some people that were placing bets and taking risk just from trackside to beat the other people that were trackside as well, which obviously drastically reduced their margin. So I think, I'm not saying you can't make money from betting in play and being trackside and courtside, you certainly can. If you've seen documentaries previously on the BBC and such, then people are still doing that day in, day out. I think it's just a lot harder than it used to be. So the number one thing for people that are betting in play and actually winning regularly large amounts of money is speed. The only other thing that I can think of, aside from being at the trackside, is if you are fortunate enough to have like a 5-metre satellite dish in your back garden and you're somehow managing to pick up feeds for various sporting events ahead of the majority, but also being ahead of time enough for allow you to place your bets in the market before Betfair's time delay kicks in with placing your bets on exchange and the market is suspended. So that covers quite a chunk there. That's why I don't really think that it's likely that things are on the up for in-play markets there, Lee. A few pros and cons. 3 things come to mind really. First of all, in-play betting and in-play trading is attractive to some people because you don't necessarily need a huge bank, and you can make a good return to stake ratio for your returns. It's that side of risk which is more towards betting, although if you have got a significant edge, then you can build up your bank quickly. Something that's probably more in the middle, it's a little bit neutral because this depends on what you're actually doing, but liquidity within the markets can be a good thing if there's lots of liquidity because you can get your bets matched, and that's where I think a lot of frustration comes for people that are in play now, is they can't get their bets matched a lot of the time, not how they used to anyway. Or on the other side of the coin, if you're one of these people that likes to catch a price way off from where it should be, then sometimes less liquidity is a good thing too, because obviously other people are chasing the price for you to get out against. So that's sort of in the middle. And then finally, stress. If you're trading in play from home or in the office or wherever you are, then it's likely to be a lot more stressful than those people that have got the time advantage on you trackside. So a couple of pros and cons there. Now finally, I just want to cover how people get an in-play edge. So I've already spoke about it quite a bit. Beating the clock is number one. It's way up there. It's miles ahead of everything. If you can beat the clock and you can get ahead of people, then you can make a significant amount of money in betting. Essentially, you're betting on something that's already happened, much like the courtsiders do in tennis. However, if you're not, then everything leads into anticipation, and anticipation is a huge thing in trading, whether you're trading pre-race or in the markets. In play. Now, if you're in play, I would say it's even more important because everything moves so fast. So here are sort of 4 things that you should bear in mind if you're looking to trade in play or bet in play. Now, the first one is knowing when the market comes alive, as I like to call it. Now, obviously the market's alive right from the moment the race starts. However, if you watch the charts within a race, something like Geekside, you'll see that there always comes a point where the market just goes mad, and it's usually as the horses start to come around the final bend. Now, it can depend largely on the second point that I want to mention, which is camera angles, because when you know where the camera angles are at certain tracks, it makes it easier for you to understand that point of explosion of activity, and therefore if you can see something's happening, or you have a good decisive opinion on what's actually happening in terms of the race of a horse, or how it's behaving, then being at the front of that wave as everything starts to explode and the activity starts to unfold can be a really positive thing. How big that edge is depends on you as a person, what you're doing. In play isn't really my main bag. I've played around with it at points before, and if anything I just focus on near the start of the race, a bit of back to lay, which is actually what that tweet that Lee was responding to about there previously. So you want to know when the market explodes with activity. You want to know how jockeys behave on certain horses, because some horses are more responsive than others. Typically, if the jockey starts to pump a horse in race, then the price is going to drift out if it isn't responding although some horses take longer to respond, and so that can be an interesting angle to exploit and anticipate, because again, if you're fully aware of how a horse normally behaves and it doesn't respond straight away and then it gets going, you can catch yourself some value in the market there. Previous running style is exactly the same, runs a parallel, there's no real need to explain that, but if you've researched how a horse typically runs within a race, how it responds to different situations, where it likes to run, etc., then that can be beneficial. And then again, the camera angles. So the camera angles is probably the biggest tip that I could give you if you're anticipating and in-play trading from home, because it's not necessarily what's happening, it's what the overall audience are seeing is happening and when they're seeing it happening. And again, that's probably, I would assume, something that people trackside are very aware of too, and it leaves them points in the market where they can exploit and grab money that's left on the exchange. So I think that's the whole question there answered for you, Lee. Gone off a little bit of a tangent. Hopefully it's helpful to some people. If anybody's got anything extra to add that will be help to other viewers, then please drop it in the comments below. But yeah, that was a worthy Q&A about in-play betting and, you know, if it's picking up. I don't see it picking up in the future, although I'd love to. I think it would take a lot more liquidity for in-play betting opportunities to go through the roof.